So I'm going to go ahead through the different nodes I've set up in this scene. So we're going to start with this first one. I've commented everything so it's nice and clear. So first of all, we emit the particles, and we're missing them from a grid. And if I go to wireframe, you'll see there's a small grid right here, and this small grid has 8 vertices, and I'm getting the point position and emitting from those points. I'm also setting instant geometry, and that's using this little guy down here, who's the mocap rig that comes with exercise samples. Next, we're working on the state tree to actually make him move and be driven by animation. So I'm setting a little timer here so I know when it's going to go from a walk state, and this is the walk state initially, and it goes directly into this state. When you do an emit, you can see it goes into state 0, and the state we're looking at here is, if we double click on it, is state 0, and that was going to go to state 1, and I've given it a blue color. And if we go back to the first frame and forward the frame, you'll see all the characters are blue. Timer starts, and then we go ahead and set the speed of a particle. So we're taking the current velocity, we're dividing it by its speed to give it kind of a velocity of 1, or a speed of 1. And then I just do a multiply by scalar and setting the speed. I want this to be set at 8. That's about right for the animation so the feet don't slide too much. And these were just like example animations, so it hasn't been set up ideally for another character. And then we set the particle velocity. I'm also getting the particle velocity and dividing by the speed and controlling the instant animation this way. And the reason I'm doing that is I actually want to be able to speed up or slow down the animation if the character speeds up or slows down. So right now this is the same. You know, you can see I've set the speed here to 8 and divide by scalar to 8 here. But if the character starts speeding up or slowing down, then I'm using the animation speed multiplier, and that will slow the animation down or speed the animation up, so the feet should still move correctly. Next we have the run state. Similar setup. We've got divide by scalar, we've got setting the particle velocity. In this case we're setting this speed up to 48 for the run, it's much faster. And again, divide by scalar, 48, same idea. I also have 2 tests. I have a test inside null here and test inside null here, and this is null 1 or null, this is null 2, and you can see it's getting null 1 and this is null 2. And those are testing if it's inside the null, it's going to jump to state 2. If the speed, and again speed from this velocity here, is below 40, it's going to go back to state 1, so it's going to start walking again. The final was the die state, and this is state 2. State 2. And it will die if the trigger above here made it go in state 2, and then what happens is I slow the particles down again, so I slow them back down to 8, and then after I start a timer, and after I think 1 or 2 seconds, or 1.5 seconds roughly, I'm actually making the particles completely stop by multiplying the velocity by 0. And the reason I'm doing that is because the way this animation works for the die sequence, it moves forward a bit and then he stops, so it was important for me to do that, so it doesn't just like start sliding backwards as he's dying. So that's the state tree part of it. The next part, and then it runs it all through a state machine. This is a state machine node. The next part of it is going to be the motion, and we're starting by driving these particles initially by using goals, and we've got 2 goals, these 2 disks. And these disks will go disk 1, disk 0, and disk 1, and it's to move towards a goal, and I'm using the goal sequencer to drive from one goal to another. And there's different options inside here to control it. Once we have the goals, I want to avoid the obstacles, the 2 cylinders, so I'm using in this case flow around surface. There's lots of ways of doing this, but flow around surface works quite well, and it's straightforward and simple, so that's what I'm using in this case. I wanted to add some kind of flocking effects. So right now, if I didn't have this force here, and I'm using the coagulate force to actually spread the particles apart, and you can see right now I'm just using the repellent strength and everything else apart from size, and cutoff is turned off, and that's so the particles don't get too close together. If I didn't have this on, you'd notice that everything starts bunching up and the characters start walking through each other, and it just doesn't look right. So adding a force to spread things apart is very useful, and this force again is one of our predefined compounds, and there are other ways of doing this, but this one was the most straightforward and easiest for this example. Then I have a couple of things just to control and avoid too much chaos. This little vector multiplier is just taking the x and z straight through and just pretty much not connecting y to reset the y to 0, and that's just so if things start to try and crawl up, the flow around can sometimes make particles, and the forces can often make particles push up or down, and I want to avoid any motion in the y, so that's why I'm just zeroing out the y vector here. And last of all, the alignment, and using the align on velocity. Again, I've got a little test here, and it's testing the velocity speed. As long as they're moving at some sort of speed, I allow it to align. If they're not moving or going very slow, I don't align to avoid too much jittering. Otherwise, you can get, if the particles stop or stay still or start moving back and forward, they just start jittering, and it's very hard to look at it. So that's everything in here, and we're going to go and start working bit by bit, starting with the emitter and working our way through each section part by part.